The Samsung Z Flip 3 is a very unique phone when compared to all other cell phones on the market today. It's kind of like what a modern beeper might look like and a gigantic glass phone if you combine those two all into one. And you know what? You should totally buy one. So, why is that? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Before we get into this video, I want to make two quick notes. First, I would like to make the disclaimer that nobody provided this phone in any way, shape, or form to me. I paid for this myself, so these are my unadulterated thoughts. Two, no, I don't want you to go out and buy everything in the You Should Buy series. This is my series that I make it's a celebration of the cool parts about consumer technology and the reasons why you should consider purchasing them. It's not an actual like, go out, all of you, spend all of your money. That's not, it's about being excited and fun. With that out of the way, let's get to the Flip. This is actually a really awesome little device that is so much better for me than I originally thought that it ever could be. I originally planned on buying this to check it out as a curiosity and ended up buying a whole new Google Fi account just to keep this thing running and with me at all times. Which, and I want you to understand that I'm a tech curmudgeon and I haven't changed phone companies, either cell service or actual ecosystem. So that I did both here, that's pretty impressive to me. Leading me to the very first reason that you should buy the Samsung Z Flip 3. This thing is a ton of fun to use. And I know that that's not really a measurable metric, right? Like how far on the fun scale does a device go for certain features? I don't know. There's no objective way to state this, so you can make your own logical jump that this is not an objective measurement. But I would say what makes this so much fun is the folding itself. I liked this even back in the day of flippable dumb phones, I guess you would call them, where it's just so satisfying to end a phone call. You're talking, hey, I don't actually like what you're saying, guy. Gary, I don't like what you're saying. So satisfying to end it with a chunk. It's just a ton of fun to go from something like a more traditional pager, and kids, if you don't know, pagers were something adults used to carry around when I was a kid, and I guess I'm not actually old enough to have ever owned one, but I've seen 30 Rock. I know people used to buy them, that you can take it from just a notification system and open it up, and you've got a very cutting edge display that we will talk about more here in a second. But the juxtaposition of old school notification tech folded up to holy crap, are we walking around the Starship Enterprise unfolded? That has not yet gotten old, and it's a big part of the fun. The next reason to buy the Z Flip 3 is because of that notification, almost the boring nature of the phone folded up. And I don't mean to call it boring, but sometimes useful means boring. And I think the main reason to buy this over any other phone, I mean, there are a ton of other devices on the market that can meet or exceed what the Z Flip can do opened up, and some of those do come from Samsung itself. But what makes this phone unique and useful is that you have basically a little notification hub with this little 1.9-inch front-facing screen that's wholly unique in the major phone world right now. And I think this makes me more productive. And yes, I did catch some guff for saying that in the last video about the Z Flip 3, but I absolutely lose tons of time a day when I check notifications on my iPhone because inevitably I'll start checking Twitter, YouTube, some other sort of distractor. While here, I haven't been. I tap, I scroll to see what's going on. If it's something that needs handled immediately, I can do that. If not, I get back to my exciting life making Excel sheets and PowerPoint slides. Yes, kids, someday you too can lead the fast-paced, fun life of a product manager. You can also take calls or listen to music while the phone is folded up, and this extends the pretty meager battery life to usable amounts when you don't need to use the main screen so much throughout the day. I would almost, Samsung, if you're listening, I would almost take a phone or a device that was just this front part by itself. I spend most of my days anymore in front of 3 computers anyway. All I really need is something to remind me when my next meeting is and to let me dial into a meeting that I don't want to be in. So all we really need to do is cut this in half and just give me a little credit card sized device for that. $1 million idea, Samsung. The next reason to buy the Z Flip 3 is that main display itself. Yes, if it's there, I'm going to talk about it because this thing is gorgeous. This might be one of the best looking phone screens that I've ever seen. It's remarkable how deep the blacks really are and just how sharp the screen is. I guess what really surprised me about this is my iPhone has technically better resolution and contrast than the Z Flip, but the Z Flip has something to it that makes it just look better. And before you say that has something to do with the refresh rate, I've actually set my Z Flip 3 to 60 Hz. Speaking of which, this will also go to 120 Hz in the display, giving it some of the smoothest operation you'll find on this side of an iPhone. And while I've never been one to get too excited about screen refresh rates, even when it's set to 60 Hz, there is just something about this phone that makes everything move so quick. And we're talking about the display, we'll talk more about the power in a second, but from the screen's perspective, this phone feels like a sports car that just always wants to go faster. Now, one of the things you might think you would have a problem with, because it is a folding phone, is the crease that phone naturally would need to have. But honestly, I don't have a visual issue with it at all. You've really got to be angling the phone into the light or the screen to really see that crease. Like, see, you see it right there. I keep my apps and my personal tech in light mode all the time, and even then, I rarely ever notice this crease. Now, physically touching the phone, it still's kind of driving me nuts, but I think more people would be more concerned about actually seeing it and it distorting the picture than being able to feel it. And fam, unless you are hunting it down, it will not bother you. The next reason to buy the Z Flip 3, let's talk about power. This phone is fast, and not just in a benchmarks show the numbers going up kind of a way, but it's just more that everything you do is quick. From scrolling around the UI, to opening apps, to playing games, everything just happens at like lightning speed. Now, I can't really explain this in a way that the phone deserves by just labeling off the processor and saying the words, it's fast. You really need to go to a store and see this in person, because I do think it's a combination of the Snapdragon 888, the fast screen that still feels blazing fast in 60 Hz, and that the animations are just a little bit snappier than I think I'm used to on my phone. You throw those three things in a mixing bowl, you stir it around, you don't have fluff, you're actually mixing it together. What you come out with is a batter that's just, it moves about as fast as you think about it moving. That did not make any sense. That's why you got to stay on script, Gary. And if we can get on a little tangent quickly, that's what I think of as useful power on a mobile device. I see a lot of videos where folks will use software to say, hey, this scores a number of X compared to last year's model. And yeah, that's fine. I'm not saying we don't need those. It is nice to know objective numbers of raw power, I guess, but it's really in how a phone handles in the mundane aspects, like scrolling through my email or playing a quick round of a game that I'm terrible at, that you really see the useful power of a device. That and the longevity you can get with software updates. But Samsung is not as much of a long-term player as Apple is. It is still nice to have the power on hand here, though, if they do release more updates. The next reason to buy the Z Flip 3 is the robust options that Samsung has for trade-ins. Now, I don't mention this very often. I don't actually think I've ever mentioned this in a video before. Folks in my comments have let me know that it's also a very liberal policy, and Samsung will take off a pretty big chunk of cash if you want to order one of these latest phones, which I can appreciate. You may not realize this from all of these YouTube videos, but I got a ton of tech just laying around my house here, and those enhanced trade-ins are very appreciated. I know that this is not wholly altruistic, and that this is a tactic to increase their own market share. But as a consumer that needs to buy a new phone, hey, I might as well take advantage of it, right? I really like how they have this just so much upfront and as a part of the ordering operation. And the last major reason that I want to talk about today on why you should buy the Z Flip 3 is something that I think Samsung currently does better than anybody else in the market, and definitely better than Apple does. This thing has so many ways to either biometrically authenticate or have a more manual unlocking process. On my iPhone, I get two options: Face ID or PIN number. And I like being able to quickly and efficiently approve or authenticate things without always needing to transition between those two, because sometimes it's a pain in the butt. On the Z Flip 3 and other Samsung devices, you get both face unlocking, but you also get fingerprint unlocking because they've got a little scanner built into the lock button. I love this. I absolutely love this feature, mainly because, like I mentioned, I'm a pretty big fan of this type of authentication, but I like that even if I'm going to be out and about, or if I'm in a meeting and I need to have a mask on, I can keep using biometric authentication. Nothing drives me more crazy than shopping for groceries with a list on my phone, because generally it's a list made by my wife, so I don't have it memorized and I've got to open it up to check. But on my iPhone, I've got to mess around until Face ID goes away and I can input my PIN. They have made this transition a little bit faster. It's just such a big headache. You always got to mess around with my phone, mess around with my phone, mess around with my phone. I just want Apple to do what Samsung has done and include both methods on their phone. This is just one of those major things that makes the Z Flip 3 such a more convenient and really enjoyable, practical phone to use. Think about it. Think about it. Humans have a bias towards negative experiences, so you won't remember the hundreds of times something worked well, but you will absolutely remember the one or two times that it didn't. And hopefully what that means for the future is I'll be able to blissfully use my Z Flip 3 without having to be so annoyed when using it at times. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Look team, I haven't found an Android phone in a long time that I've had such a connection with. I haven't recommended an Android phone in years here on the channel because there just isn't a reason to move to one when there are cheaper and, in my opinion, more useful options out there from Apple. And while the Z Flip 3 doesn't win on everything, it certainly doesn't win on battery life, it isn't a part of the Apple ecosystem, and it doesn't have the most useful of Samsung tech for me, Samsung DeX, I think that this is an incredibly fun, but more importantly, useful phone that I have zero problems recommending to you. If you have been on the fence about foldables and want to give one a shot, this is absolutely the foldable phone that I would point you towards. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content on this incredibly small flipping, flapping phone, here's a link to my playlist where you can check out all sorts of cool stuff. And you can find it by clicking right here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.